Hi everyone, welcome to Speak Free with me, Simon O'Connor, here on RCR. Look, to all our listeners and watchers, great to have you back. And as always, as the title of the show suggests, we love your thoughts. Be it on this show, anything we're discussing, or of course anything you hear here on RCR, get in touch. You can email us at inbox@realitycheck.radio, or you can text 2057. We love hearing from you. I certainly do. And look, this morning I have an amazing guest. In fact, it may not be the morning. I'm recording it this morning, but you may be listening and watching at any time. But very excited to bring on to the show Nathan Sayuli from Pillar, New Zealand. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Simon. Great to be here.
Hopefully you're a familiar face to people. Granted, those watching this will maybe see familiarity. Those who are listening sort of on radio or Spotify will be going, how can I see his face? But Nathan, you have been involved with the likes of the Free Speech Union with My Family First hat on. I know that you've been on our weekly chat show on a Monday night. But you've now set up something called Pillar New Zealand. And today we're actually going to be talking around police surveillance, AI and cameras. But before we get into that juicy subject, give us a quick heads up what Pillar's about.
Yeah, well, Pillar's just a civil liberties organisation based here in New Zealand, focused on New Zealand, and our focus is to protect individual life, liberty and rights. And for all of you sleuths out there, you'll know that Pillar's an acronym for that. And what we really are looking to do is restore the pillars of democracy. So that's what we do, and that's who we are.
I think it's actually very exciting. And I do want to come back, after we've talked about the police and surveillance, back to a bit more about what you're doing with Pillar and why it was set up, because it is quite broad. As it is pillars, there's multiple ones of them. But as listeners also know, as you will, I love a good acronym, so that is great. But look, why I've got you on the show is a couple of weeks ago we were chatting and you mentioned to me police have been using AI cameras around surveillance, and you at Pillar were concerned about what was happening. And look, you know far more about this than me, but I knew enough that I needed you to come and chat on the show. So tell us what's happening and what your concerns are.
Yeah, so police have been using the system for a while now. It's a private company called Aura, but set up sort of 10 years ago in conjunction with police. And what they are is AI-powered cameras. The main way that the police are exercising these cameras at the moment is in number plate scanning. So over 4 months, 2 cameras alone raised over $900,000 worth of fines. Now, the reason that this is of interest, because obviously this is great, more people are being caught doing illegal things, and there's fines being brought into the economy and the system and whatever you want to call it. There are benefits to this system. What was revealed, though, through an internal police review was that the system was far too loosely controlled. So they discovered that anybody with a police account, email, login, over 8,500 people, in fact, could access the system. Not just access it, they could take information from the system. And more than just taking it, they didn't have to record why they're taking it. So the crazy thing about these cameras is they're so powerful, they can tell you where a car has been for up to 60 days. Now, this obviously sets a very dangerous precedent for a system this strong, this powerful, with this much capability, and with such few controls as to who can use it. I mean, you don't have to look too far down the breaking headlines list to see that even recently, we've had police officers leaking information to their boyfriends, or people using their access to the system to look up potential love interests. It's a serious concern. And because it's not held necessarily within the police's internal systems, the controls that they have on their actual system are not there. So that's the reason we've brought it up. There's a handful of lawyers who are arguing that it bypasses the checks and balances of a traditional search warrant, and they're representing a handful of clients who have been caught because of this technology outside of the bounds of a police search. So there are benefits. People are being caught, criminals are being caught, fines are being incurred. But the bigger question exists as to what's happening to all this data, why is it accessible to so many people, why are the controls so loose, and what more could the system do in terms of facial recognition, which we know now the system can do, especially within big retailers like supermarkets, Briscoes, and so on. So that's sort of the overview of the issue.
So for people like myself who aren't necessarily that bright and smart, what's the difference between if you were just a camera and an AI camera? Is it the effect of its ability to collate the data and compare it?
Well, obviously, for me, when I am taking photos on my phone, I take 4 or 5. I have to go then and delete all the photos I don't want. AI does this automatically. AI also can compile a list of information related to that number plate or that person's facial recognition scan. And what it does, and what the police even said in their own report, it was producing far more information than they knew what to do with. The other thing as well is that we have to note is they also admit that it's not perfect. The system can misidentify, misinterpret, it can misflag someone. So a lot of the information that it does collect is deleted, or supposedly deleted and not stored permanently. But a lot of it is also misidentified and therefore stored. So AI just increases the capacity of these cameras far beyond anything that we could do humanly possible. And that's why lawyers are arguing that it bypasses the checks and balance of traditional police searches. It removes that discernment and that discretion that police would apply, and it removes also the authority or the accessibility that they would have to apply for because it just does it automatically. And they justify it on the basis that it happens in a public space, which is maybe a justified argument in some regards, but also sets a dangerous precedent.
So, I mean, how many cameras are we talking? I mean, we all know about
Mm,
speed cameras, for example. I like to just put on record that I have not, want to stress, not been captured by one yet. But we obviously have speed cameras, but you were mentioning we have now facial recognition software running cameras
mm.
in supermarkets. If you go down any main street in New Zealand, you'll see cameras. I mean, are those linked into the police system? How wide does this go?
Well, that's part of the problem. We don't know. This case that I've referenced twice now of a handful of lawyers looking for greater control and transparency, they went through the Court of Appeal. Now, the Court of Appeal, to properly litigate this case, requested a bunch of specific information, including how many cameras are active, how much police pay for these cameras, and what the capability of these cameras are. In response to that, the Crown, alongside the private company Aura, came out and said that they weren't actually going to release that information because of the public-private interest of the issue. It's concerning that they don't want to tell how many cameras are active. Like I said at the start, we know that two cameras alone that were active in the form of SUV-powered or SUV speed cameras collected over $900,000 worth of fine in 4 months. So that's how powerful just two are, but we don't know the actual number or how much police are paying to use the system. We know over 8,500 people can access the system. And when it comes to big retailers, it's a whole other category as well. And the Privacy Commissioner has been commenting on this as well.
So it does strike me as quite extraordinary, actually. And probably, do correct me on this from your perspective. I mean, the use of technologies to help crime fighting is not a
Mm,
bad thing, but this
absolutely not.
is, yeah, but this is an extraordinary, well, potentially
Mm,
uh, an extraordinary invasion of privacy, or at least so
mm,
broad. It's sort of like a trawl net fishing, and you're just dragging all sorts of things. And I
mm,
suppose if I'm hearing you right, yeah, we would expect more openness from police and Aura because they're
mm,
contracted, they're being paid by taxpayers' money. Your thing is, hey, look, we just want more details about how many, not necessarily even where. I mean, maybe you
mm.
want to know that, but how many are operating? What exactly are they harvesting? Certainly the privacy concerns. You say they keep it for 60 days.
They can do if they flag you. So if you're facially scanned at a supermarket and you're flagged or misidentified, they can keep it up for 60 days. The number plates, they can tell where you've been for up to 60 days. So there's a continual photo log being built of everything that's captured. You are right. There's so little known about this issue publicly, and it does raise the questions why we can't know publicly what else is going on. There's lawyers asking for this information. There's people far more qualified and far more informed than me asking for this information. So I would only have what I've been able to gather through the great reporting by one individual at RNZ. There's one guy who's on this case. So he's trying to find out as much as he can, but there's so many blockages in place at the moment. And you are right. The benefits of including technology in crime fighting are really, really clear. Like there's already been a reduction in retail crime. Like I said, they've raised $900,000 worth of fines. These things are positive and they impact society positively. But setting up these sorts of systems with a lack of clear infrastructure, a lack of clear controls, just means they exist there for someone who's not as benevolent, or someone who's not as maybe charitable to take over these systems. And that's sort of the argument that I always come back to. While it might be beneficial now, it's not always going to be beneficial. It's the same as people who call for a strongman leader, a dictator. You might get a Lee Kuan Yew first, but then you might have a Stalin second. So setting up these systems and these norms actually is not beneficial in the long run if we don't do it well. And that's all we're asking for: transparency, accountability. They have clear benefits to society, but we need to make sure they also have clear controls that they're not infringing on everyday people and everyday privacy.
That certainly echoes with me. Look, I've seen that, if you will, the benefits of facial technology. I was a shadow minister for internal affairs at one point, and so I had to deal with the casinos. I remember, when they introduced, in their case, facial recognition makes a big difference. I'm not
Mm,
waving the flag here for casinos per se, but it made a big difference because they could actually identify, particularly, problem gamblers coming in
mm,
and out. And again, we can see the crime fighting benefits, but it
Mm.
is, as I keep coming back to, a huge trawl of data, which impacts all of us. And then secondly, as you say, they're not prepared to actually discuss how they might use it. And that's not really how our police works. And I suppose the
Mm.
third issue that you touched on is there's no protocols, my word here, but there doesn't seem to be any appropriate protocols around who is accessing the data. I mean, that's
Yeah.
also quite extraordinary.
Well, the police themselves outlined all of this in their report. This is not some whistleblower who's come out against the police. This is the police themselves self-reporting. Now, the interesting thing on the back of this is, though, that they said controls are too loose. We need to apply greater control. We need to have greater clarity, consistency. We need to improve our system. A handful of weeks later, they came out and said, we're actually not looking into any of the potential misuse and abuse, despite the stats telling us use of the system jumped over 50%, and they're using it hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times. I think 500,000 was the number, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times more than what they would deem reasonable. So it just does show you that so many people are accessing this path or this system that they don't need to. There's no restriction on what level of police you have to be to access it, the same that there would be in their normal system. It's just anybody with a login can get in there at the moment. And they've said they were going to tighten it up. They haven't. They've come actually out and said that all of the same system, all the same problems persist. And that's where it actually is at the moment. The last bit of reporting that they put out was that nothing had improved and they weren't looking into anything further.
I mean, it's speculation here, but why would they write a report and then not follow through with their own recommendations from your perspective? There's the million-dollar question.
Well, as someone who's formerly served in Parliament, you might have a better idea on why pointless reports are produced. But no,
Hey,
it's
hey,
people
I'm
pushing
the interviewer here.
it. No, I genuinely like I want to make this abundantly clear. I genuinely value and respect the police in our society. I think that a huge majority of them out here to do the best job possible to make sure our community is safe. Um, and so I don't want to paint the police with a sinister brush, but I do understand how hard it is to implement some of these changes. I do understand that some of these big undertakings, they did this report in good faith, and they have probably just realized they've set themselves a mammoth task. So it might just be an issue of too hard right now, but that doesn't mean we should let up the pressure of asking them when it is going to happen, how it's happening, and asking for transparency throughout this process. So I absolutely believe they carried out this report with every intention to make it better. It's just a lot harder than I think they were intending to discover. So we should give them the benefit of the doubt, but we should also make sure that it's part of the public conversation. We can't just let this slide unregulated and sort of without any accountability.
Well, that's one of the key reasons I wanted you to come on and talk on the show so our listeners could be aware that this is happening. I mean, for me personally, one of the simplest, says me, thing is just simply for police who access the system to put a note as of
Mm,
why. Just about every other government system that I've been involved with, if you're looking at someone's details, you have to leave a little note to explain. And then, from
mm,
time to time, there are audits. And I suppose I'm just putting forward an example out of,
mm.
well, it may not be real, but if cops are able to access flagged information without having to explain why, they could be tracking their kids, where are they actually going on a Friday night and so on. I mean, it's a silly example, but it's
Yeah.
just an open
Well,
door.
they have used the system to unlawfully track gang members, and this is the thing. There's a little sympathy for gang members out there. I'm not trying to be the advocate for gang members, but it's an example of an infringement that is justified by the public opinion that sets a precedent that it can then be far more widely abused in the future. Because we've set this precedent of it being appropriate now for a certain group of people, whoever is in charge decides what that group of people is. And this is why we always have to make sure that equality under the law, we always have to make sure that systems and processes are set up independently of bias, even though it's really, really hard to do. We have to make sure that these processes do happen in order to protect everyone equally.
And look, I think it's a really valid point. And, I found it when I was in Parliament, often was trying to look at legislation to go, all right. And I loved your Lee Kuan Yew, the Singaporean Prime Minister example in Stalin earlier, trying to put your feet, if you will, in the shoes of the good guys and go, right, okay,
Mm,
this is why the law would operate well. But I found it always useful to try and, imagine what would someone bad, for one of a, God, sounds like a childish term, but someone with malicious intent, how could they take a law like this and misuse? And I think what you've just explained there around gang members, I mean, I'm no friend of gangs. I'd like to see them all locked up, but you can't misuse the law to
yeah.
surveil them, period, because actually it means that they could be surveilling other and better people for nefarious purposes.
Well, there's a famous poem by, I think he's a German theologian called Martin Niemöller, and he talks about the groups that they go through. You know, first they came for this group, then this group, then this group, and eventually they came for me, and there was no one left to stand for me. And this is what happens when we're not taking principled approaches to defending freedom and liberty. If you're not going to fight for the least of those, if you're not going to stand up for the scumbag and the scoundrel, sooner or later your ticket will come due. And I've seen it all too often where people are unprincipled until their issue comes to the top of the list, and then they're all about it. And that's my job, to take people from being issue-based defenders to principle-based defenders. And it's not always making me a popular guy, but I'll always stand for the principle of freedom and liberty for whoever it counts for.
Which I think is great, though I'm disappointed you didn't give us the poem in the original German.
It's too aggressive. I can't do it. I don't have the throat capacity, you know.
German's not a language I've studied, so I can't help there. Well, that nicely brings us back to Pillar, and you mentioned earlier there's multiple parts to it. It's obviously freedom and liberties, but I know you're also looking into foreign affairs. Just give our viewers and listeners a bit more of a sense of what you are hoping to achieve with Pillar.
Ultimately, we just believe New Zealand is amazing at Pillar. We think New Zealand is an extremely blessed country, for lack of a better term. Our democracy is incredible. I don't think we're utilizing it very well at the moment. I think that's clear in a lot of the way that people are voting or engaging politically or some of the discourse that's happening. But our hope is that we would instill a sense of optimism, and we would instill that by standing for freedom of speech, conscience, thought, inquiry, religion, belief, and the right to privacy. That we would defend these core freedoms, and we would do it by being moderate, credible, principled, transparent, and operating with integrity. So those are our core freedoms and our core values. But we just really think that we have something here in New Zealand that we should be proud of, that we should be intentional in protecting and advancing. And hopefully all the work that we do is not just telling you everything that's wrong with the world, but also telling you how you could be a part of being the solution. It starts in the home, it moves to the community, and eventually we'll have the greatest nation in the world. I truly, truly believe that. So at Pillar, that's what we're committed to. We're committed to seeing the best New Zealand, the greatest New Zealand for everyone who lives there, that they would have the ultimate level of freedom and liberty. We believe in a culture that cherishes freedom and a system that prioritizes liberty, and ultimately people who see the innate value and dignity in one another.
Well, I'm into that from my side. I mean, it won't surprise anyone. Very supportive of the work you're starting out, and I'm always big on the whole fact of rights. That rights exist to be exercised, but they've been hard won, and as we've experienced here in New Zealand, they can easily be taken away. So it's good that we have another civil liberties group, in this case, Pillar New Zealand. If people want to get in touch with you, you must have a website, your social media. How do they find you?
Yeah, you can find us at nzpillar.com or across every social platform. Our handles at pillar_NZ. So we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to tell you more about what we're doing, and we'd love to hear your feedback on what we're doing. Are we doing a good job? Are we not? So feel free to send all your thoughts, feelings, and criticism our way. We'll happily read it all.
Nathan, great to have you on the show today. Look, undoubtedly, we will have you back on because there is just so much you're touching on, and the challenges in our society are numerous. But also, I can't speak for everybody, but for myself, I think we have an optimistic future here in New Zealand if we hold and cherish those liberties and work together. So look, thanks for being part of the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, and thank you to all the listeners. You guys are amazing.
Oh, I was gonna finish there. I was gonna say you're an absolute charmer. I love it. Hey, Nathan, thanks again. And look, everyone, that was Nathan Sayuli. He's of Pillar New Zealand, our newest civil liberties group, and talking here around elements of police surveillance happening in New Zealand. If you enjoyed that, or if you have any feedback, as I said at the start, get in touch. You can email us at inbox@realitycheck.radio, or you can text 2057. And in the meantime, I hope you have a great day. And that's all from me, Simon O'Connor, here on Speak Free.
Say no to digital IDs. Go to www.digitaltrap.co.nz and sign the petition today.